Hi friends, welcome to IIBS IAS Academy YouTube channel. I am Ashok, Assistant Professor at IIBS IAS Academy, and I have been training from UPSC aspirants since the past 4 years. In this YouTube channel, we will be covering all the issues important for UPSC Civil Services Examination and also for the state public service examinations. Please do like, share, comment and do subscribe to our channel. Thank you. Welcome to IIBS IAS Academy. Today we are going to go for the newspaper analysis of the Hindu on 17th October 2020. The first news is, our Prime Minister has said MSP is the key to India's food security. Recently there are many farm laws which have actually come. So because of the farm laws, the farmers are ambiguous what will actually happen. As per the new laws, the farmer can actually sell any amount of produce to whoever he wants. He can make direct contact with the industries or any other person, and he can sell anywhere in the country where he thinks there will be more profit. Right? It is controversial because the farmers do not know what policies the industries make, and there can be a chance of exploitation because the farmers are not so knowledgeable. And also there was an ambiguity whether the government will be willing to purchase the produce from the farmers or not with the minimum support price. So to clear that ambiguity, our Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has said that MSP is the key to India's food security. There is no way the minimum support price will be taken away from the farmers, because to maintain the food security, to make sure the India puts food on every individual, even though irrespective of their economical status, so minimum support price is essential. So MSP is the key to India's food security, right? And the next news is about the stubble burning. So as in the previous classes we have discussed that stubble burning is the major reason for the pollution in New Delhi. So for that, stubble burning, SC appoints one-man panel to monitor and prevent instances of stubble burning. The stubble burning is happening in Haryana and during a particular season where the harvest is actually being burned down. And because the winds are blowing in direction towards the Delhi, it is bringing all the particulate matters from the Haryana to Delhi, polluting Delhi as a whole, right? We are using technology for real-time monitoring of the pollution, and we are assessing how the pollution is actually increasing or decreasing, and we are also predicting how it may increase further. New research sheds light on declining star formation in Milky Way galaxy. So universe has actually formed about 13.7 billion years ago, and about 8 billion years ago the star formation was at its peak, and the major components of the star is hydrogen, right? The atom hydrogen, the basic element with only one electron, one proton and one neutron. So here the new researchers sheds light on the declining star formation in the Milky Way galaxy. So when the research has actually shed a light on whether the star formation is taking at the same pace or it has been declining. For that we have used Giant Meter Wave Radio Telescope to glean vital clues. So they used upgraded Giant Meter Wave Radio Telescope. With this telescope we are trying to analyze the radio waves which are emitting distantly from the different stars, and when we analyze that, particular wavelength, so we can understand whether the hydrogen amount is actually more or not, and depending upon the amount of the hydrogen gases present in the universe, we can analyze whether the star formation is taking at the same pace or not. And now because of the research we have known that the star formation is actually being slowed down. And the research was conducted by Pune-based National Center for Radio Astrophysics, which is associated with Tata Institute of Fundamental Research and Raman Research Institute in Bengaluru. And as we can see here, the reason for the declining the star formation is so far unknown. The next one, editorial. The Valley's voice. The center must respect the voices of reason and moderation in Kashmir. So Article 370 has been completely taken off from the Constitution of India, and Jammu and Kashmir was separated as Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh Union territories. And with this, there was some disturbances in the Jammu and Kashmir, and because of which many of the leaders were kept under preventive detention, who were recently released. And all the political parties of Jammu and Kashmir have come together to form the People Alliance for Gupkar Declaration. So they have come together to form People's Alliance for Gupkar Declaration. The reason for the formation of the Gupkar Declaration is to fight for the restoration of special status of Jammu and Kashmir. Because Article 370 has given special status to the Jammu and Kashmir. And when Article 370 was amended and it was removed from the Constitution of India, so Jammu and Kashmir has lost the special status category. And also now anybody from India can actually buy the properties over there, and the government is claiming that with the mainstream land, Jammu and Kashmir will also have the statehood without any special status, but the special packages will be provided for the developmental purposes, and with this there can be decline in the terrorism and there can be decline in the proper functioning of the government in Jammu and Kashmir. But the people of Jammu and Kashmir and the political parties affine to the Jammu and Kashmir have come together to make sure whichever the amendment which took away the Article 370 has to be restored back. So that is the Gupkar Declaration. And this editorial talks about the various voice, because when we talk about the Jammu and Kashmir and when we talk about the democracy, obviously the people voice counts. So whatever the changes that are happening, they cannot be unilateral without the people's consent. So because of this, the people voice matters, and the government has to make sure, right? The government has to make sure whatever the changes that are happening in the Jammu and Kashmir has to have the people's approval. And it sought to delegitimize the regional parties by terming them soft separatists. This is one of the points which is essential, because the government is actually blaming the political parties of Jammu and Kashmir, saying that they are separating Jammu and Kashmir from the mainland India, and unleash the state agencies against them. So unleash the state agencies, they kept under preventive detention for more than an year. And also internet was taken down, and also telecommunication system was taken down in the Jammu and Kashmir. And Jammu and Kashmir reorganization in 2019 created new international dimensions. So there has been international resentment also on the way Jammu and Kashmir was created. Even there was a controversy whether it was constitutional or not, and the case has been running in the Supreme Court. And the BJP government at the center evidently believes that the domination, not accommodation, is a way forward in Kashmir, which has helped the party's electoral appeal in the heartland and acts as incentive. So the BJP government, the central government of India, has evidently believes that the domination is important rather than the accommodation. So when you talk about the accommodation, you have to take the people's voice into the consideration, but it did not take the people's voice into consideration, and it did what is essential for the Jammu and Kashmir. And with sufficient amount of the force, any policy is enforceable on the ground, but this is not the moral choice that democratic societies make. Right? When you talk about the democracy, you have to let the people speak. Without the people speaking, you cannot make the change with force. So this is a very important article on Jammu and Kashmir. Next one, hope amid uncertainty. It is an article on economy and also the COVID, how the COVID has affected the economical status of entire world. The hope among uncertainty, the International Monetary Fund calls for more international cooperation as the world economy recovers slowly. So initially it was predicted that the global contraction will actually drop by 5.2%, but now it was projected to shrink only by 4.4%, but it is a good news, but it is not shrinking that much. And with the unlock which is happening recently in the global economy, so the more the GDP what the countries are getting has actually increased. So the output seems rebounding at a marginally slower 5.2% pace in 2021. And pointing out that the pandemic is set to leave scars well into the medium term as labor markets take time to heal, investment is held back by uncertainty and balance sheet problems, and loss schooling impair human capital. There are many other problems the COVID has actually brought. The COVID has actually taken down the economy, and no economical transactions are happening in the country and in the world, and also the human capital is also not working up to the potential. So all these problems has come up with the COVID. And IMF chief economist Gopi Nath contends that global growth will gradually slow about 3.5% in the medium term. And the estimated loss because of the economic contraction, because of the COVID, with the cumulative loss of output related to the pre-pandemic projected path estimated to more than double to 28 trillion over 2020 and 2025. This is the amount of contraction, this is the amount of the economic output that was actually crushed. And we also observed that inequality between the economies and also between the nations will actually increase because of the COVID, because a few countries are doing better than the other. The many countries are actually dealing with the COVID-19 situation, and India is in the second place, right? There are more patients that are coming on the day-to-day basis, and we are still at the peak, and so recently we have seen the decline in the peak, and we do not know when the second peak will be. So the India is at stake. And also when we talk about the vaccines and the new treatments, we do not know when the vaccines or the new treatments will actually come. But if they come soon, so you can actually see the boost of the global income by almost 9 trillion by the end of 2025. Okay? This is important for us. And the next other point, next other current affairs is constitutional pickle of the Andhra kind, right? So in Andhra Pradesh, we are seeing the tussle between the government of Andhra Pradesh and also the High Court. Recently, the government of Andhra Pradesh has filed an affidavit in the Supreme Court of India saying that the High Court is acting in favor of the opposition party, and it is taking all the decisions against the government of Andhra Pradesh. It has written a letter to the Chief Justice of India. So what is this political tussle is all about, and how does this political tussle will affect the better functioning and the transparency and also the trust of people on the judiciary of India and the government of India. As the court states, the checks and balances for politicians, bureaucrats and judges are a must, as a political mudslinging may smear the judiciary. So obviously when we talk about the government of India, so we have the three-tier government, the executive, judiciary and the legislative. So everything is acting as the checks and balances, right? So checks and balances are essential for any body. That is unequivocal. So here we have to understand what is a gag order, right? The gag order was actually given by the Chief Justice of High Court, Andhra Pradesh, and when there was a FIR filed against the judges, against the old political parties, and they said that information should not be revealed to the public. That was a gag order. So why it should not be revealed to the public? Why the transparency should not be maintained? That was controversial. And now the onus is on the Chief Justice of India, because the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh has written a letter to the Chief Justice of India. Now all eyes were on the Chief Justice of India, how he will find balance between the High Court of Andhra Pradesh and also the government of Andhra Pradesh. So now we have to see how it will be, because if the Chief Justice of India gives any verdict on the favor of the government of India, so the trust the people has on the judiciary will actually lose. And if the alternative way happens, the trust on the government, trust on the people on the government will lose. So how the right balance will actually happen is the question. The next one, the China's rise and fall at the United Nations. So after the World War II, the United Nations has been formed, right? So after the World War I, to prevent another World War, the League of Nations was actually established, but it did not prevent another war. So after the World War II, the League of Nations was abolished, and we have the United Nations. And in the United Nations, there are 5 permanent members. And the reason for the inclusion of the 5 permanent members is because of the contribution of those particular nations to the World War II. And China has contributed to to the World War II, sending most of its troops in support to the Allies, right, Allied powers. And also it did not accept the Treaty of Versailles. It did not accept the Treaty of Versailles, and because of its contributions to the World War II, it was included in the permanent 5 members in the United Nations. And because it is a permanent member in the United Nations, it has used its power to get main positions in most of the United Nations bodies. And now we are seeing the fall at the United Nations. The China's fall at the United Nations. The United Nations season, though, started on an auspicious note for India, with India besting China in the election for the seat on the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. This is important for us. Recently, when the China and India contended for the seat of the United Nations Commission on the Status for Women, the India has actually bested China. This has actually the victory for India. And in 2011, the India defeated China in the 1-to-1 election at the United Nations for a place in the Joint Inspection Unit. So this is also a greater advantage. So when we talk about the United Nations, it is a geopolitical scenario, right? So it is a multilateral organization where more opportunities will bring for the tie-ups for one nation to the other nations. China being on the top, on the P5 nations, whatever the resolutions that takes against the China, it can actually veto it. And also India also looking for the expansion of the permanent P5 members, right? India is actually asking for the expansion of the permanent members of United Nations Security Council, but the China is vetoing against it. Far from happy toy story. This is important for us. This comes under art and culture. The Prime Minister says India has the potential to become a hub for the global toy industry. Artisans face a range of problems. Recently in the Milky Bath, he has stated that the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi ji, has actually stated that India has huge potential. India has huge potential to become a major hub for toy industry. But the local toy industry is actually crumbling with the advent, with the superiority and lesser price of Chinese goods. And because of the COVID-19, so we have seen the closure of the toy making stores, right? The business is yet to pick up for the famed Channapatna toys. So these are the famous toys which are made up of wood, right? These are the famous toys which are made of wood, and especially for the children. And in the Channapatna, we have seen that there is the Chinese goods. Yeah, you can see here the China crisis in Channapatna. This is the place in Karnataka region, Channapatna. See here, the China's crisis in Channapatna. The arrival of the Chinese toys in the market at almost half the price of the Channapatna toys severely impacted the industry. It is the recent times, right? It is the recent times. But there is one other issue which has actually impacted the toy industry in India. The first one is the demonetization, next one is the GST. And GST is levied at about 12% on the goods of India, right? On the toys of India. So because of which initially there are more international communities coming for India for the purchase of the toys are not actually coming. And also because of the COVID, the situation has become much worse. The Channapatna toys date back to the reign of 18th century ruler of the Mysore kingdom, Tipu Sultan, who invited patient artisans to train local artisans in making the wooden toys, right? And the important point is the geographical indication tag, right? So the geographical indication tag is an intellectual property right given to the famous goods and services which are provided in a particular location. We call it a geographical indication tag. We call it a geographical indication tag, GI tag. GI tag is a sign used to products that have a specific geographical origin and possess qualities or a reputation that are due to its origin, right? Like Tirupati Laddu. So we have the GI tags. Next one. The modus mentioned about Etikopaka, So Etikopaka is also famous for the toys that are being made, and recently the Narendra Modi has actually mentioned about the Etikopaka has generated a lot of interest among the startups and other business communities. And Etikopaka handicrafts have GI tag as well. Demand for the eco-friendly toys. And also illegal wood in Kondapalli. Kondapalli has also the GI tag, which is very famous for the toy making. And because the government has not responded to the interests of the people of the toy makers, they are using the illegal toys for the manufacturing of this particular goods. And manufacture for the eco-friendly toys. Since most of the toys are made up of wood, they are eco-friendly. They are not the plastic products. So because there is an increased demand for the eco-friendly toys, so we can actually expand the toy making and we can really become a global partner. So the market research report suggested that there is a great demand for the eco-friendly wooden toys across the world, right? As wooden toys are non-hazardous as well, so we can manufacture the wooden toys at a better price and a better quality, and we can export those wooden toys across the globe. India fares poorly in hunger index. The recently Global Hunger Index 2020 has actually come, and India has been ranked 94, right? India has been ranked 94, and in the ranking only the 100 and odd countries have actually come, and India is one of the worst nations in when it comes to the hunger index. And according to the hunger index, 4 categories are actually taken. Among the 4 categories, India wasting rate was very less, and also India's stunting height for age is also very worse. So when you talk about the child wasting, it means the height to weight ratio, right? To a particular height, how much weight has to be, right? So child wasting is very worse for India, and also stunted growth. When you talk about the stunting, so you are talking about the height to age ratio. So according to the age, because it is not just genetical in nature according to the height, because the nutrition also plays a very vital role. So more than nutrition, the children tend to grow more height. So in these areas, we have the undernourishment of the children. And India has improved in 2 categories. The first one is the child mortality rates, which is now at just 3.7%. And in terms of the undernourishment, which is about 14% than the previous. And the pandemic has affected around 690 million people, and it has pushed those many people to undernourishment. And when we are talking about the hunger, so it is the second goal to be achieved as per the Sustainable Development Goals. So when you talk about Sustainable Development Goals, whatever the resources you are enjoying, so those resources has to be passed to the future generations, right? We call it sustainable development. According to the Sustainable Development Goals, the first goal is the no poverty, and the second one is the no hunger. And India doing worse in the second Sustainable Development Goals, in achieving Sustainable Development Goals. And next one, repurposed drugs did not cut down mortality rates, says World Health Organization. So when the COVID has actually come, so we have used different drugs thinking that they will prevent the mortality rate because of COVID. So they are remdesivir and lopinavir and hydrochloroquine and interferons. So we have used these different types of drugs, and there are different trials that have happened because of this, and all the trials has resulted to one logical conclusion, that they are not going to reduce the mortality because of the COVID. Next one, it is important for the international relations. So what is behind the anti-government demonstrations in Thailand? In the Thailand, the anti-government demonstrations are happening since a few days. So what is the reason behind it? So the Thailand government was actually led by the army chief turned Prime Minister Chan Ocha, who declared the state of emergency. On Thursday, banning the public gatherings and censoring the media and tackling the growing student protests. The student protests are going against the monarchy because the monarchy has made significant changes and his power has gradually increased, undermining the democracy. Because of this, all the students and the teachers are actually protesting against the government. To curb that, the state of emergency has been imposed, and and the protesters have dismissed the emergency decree. Even though the decree has been dismissed, yet the government has tried to attempt to take away the right and vote to continue the agitation, right? So, because the government is acting against the interests of the people, they started protesting against the government. So, the Thai monarchy, when we talk about the Thai monarchy, it has historically been shielded from the public criticism by strict lèse-majesté laws. The monarchy lost absolute authority in the Siamese revolution in 1932, but the king retained godlike stature. And also there are many properties which are associated with the budget of the government. And also in the recent times, because of the changes that has happened, so he asserted more authority on the government, and his dominance on the government has actually significantly increased. So because of this, the students has demanded for a few rights. The 35-year-old human rights lawyer and one of the leaders of the protesters called for the reforms in the monarchy. The students submitted 10-point demand to the government of Thailand, and few of them are asking for the separation of the king's assets and the crown's property bureau, and they also wanted to cut the palace share on the national budget and ban on the king from expressing his political views and safeguard to prevent him from endorsing future coups, right? And students have also called for the Prime Minister's resignation. So all the 10-point demands has to be met, and the protest has been happening in the Thailand. And unlike the past political agitations, the political agitation is not happening between the leading political party and the opposition party, but all the protest is happening because of the teachers and the students. So this is for today, and for newspaper analysis, please stay tuned to IIBS IAS Academy. Thank you. Bye. Please do like the video, and if you have any queries, please put down in the comments below, and we'll be making videos on those areas. And please click on the bell icon and do subscribe to our channel. Thank you.